the Philadelphia Inquirer reported he was fired. And that's key. That's a key term
Right.
because contracts expire this time of year. I explain it all the time. Scouting is with personnel people. It's draft to draft, not season to season. So
We've got a Thursday edition of Birds 365 on the front burner for you today. Your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you. Second week, still first week of May, I guess it is. We just turned the corner. And usually a bit of a slow time around the NFL, not necessarily for the Philadelphia Eagles. They made a bunch of their veteran players available, and John McMullen got to go down and be part of the crew that questioned them, and announcements coming out that the Eagles are shaking up their front office even more. Johnny Mac, we've been talking about this for a month plus, that the Eagles have been victim of other teams coming in and saying, we could take a couple of your executives off your hands. And the exodus here from Philadelphia has been pretty substantial. Well, we might now find out that even more so during this offseason, a couple more people let go in the Eagles front office. Is Howie Roseman just walking around the office by himself these days, Johnny Mac? He goes, oh, that cubicle's empty. Uh-oh, that cubicle's empty. We know how he had a good draft weekend, but we think he did so with some helping hands. But those helping hands are getting out the door pretty damn quickly.
yeah, I mean, the more important ones are obviously we already know, and they're entrenched. Brandon Brown up the turnpike with the New York Giants as the assistant GM, Ian Cunningham as the assistant GM in Chicago, and now Catherine Raich is going to rejoin Andrew Berry as his assistant in Cleveland. Those are the big ones, and even bigger than that is Andy Weidl, his potential future if he gets the Pittsburgh GM job, and that's still to be determined. But they did, reports are they moved on from four staffers, I think it was, and one of them was Casey Weidl. So that's the one that interests me for two reasons, Jody, because I haven't been able to confirm this, but the Philadelphia Inquirer reported he was fired, and that's key. That's a key term
Right.
because contracts expire this time of year. I explain it all the time. Scouting is with personnel people. It's draft to draft, not season to season. So generally, a lot of contracts expire first, second week of May. Draft was a little bit late this year, um, and guys just say, "Hey, I want to." Sometimes they say, I want to go somewhere else. I got somebody else got a job. I want to go there. And my contract expired. And that's sort of there's always a bit of churn at the bottom. And in the Eagles category, they're going to be bringing in some new people. So maybe, Howie Roseman said, they want their own scouts. They want the guys they're comfortable with, whomever he's going to bring in. We'll see. And the Eagles tend to announce these things officially all at once. They'll put out their personnel department probably later this month sometime. But Casey, because of Andy, is interesting. And if they fired him, it's even more interesting because that's not an expiring contract. That indicates at least some animosity on somebody's side. Um, and you're talking about family and I think Andy's done a very good job since Joe Douglas has left. It's always tricky when you have nepotism, although this league is rife with it. But it's always strange when you see a move like that, and it could indicate a whole host of things. Most notably that Andy's not going to be here, and that he is going to get the Pittsburgh job. But that's just speculation. Some of the other guys, I mean, Sean Heinlein was one of the scouts who was let go. He was the Southwest area scout. I can't help but think that he's paying the price for Jalen Rager. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of. His contract's expiring. Jalen Rager, Southwest area scout. That's how this league is. And the other ones are, Evan Pritt specifically. I mean, he was low man on the totem pole. So maybe that's just an evaluation. Wasn't going the direction the Eagles wanted it. I don't know. It's really tough to dig out this type of information because it's not like players. It's not very public. It's not very forward. But the one that I would raise a little red flag on is Casey Weidl. Not that he was a huge part of the department. Again, it's not like this was Ian Cunningham or Brandon Brown or Catherine Rach, but just because of who he is and who his brother is, that's a little bit strange.
It was. And as you kind of noted, the timing of it is important to try and read between the lines here. We don't know whether Andy Weidl's going to get the Pittsburgh job or not. Kevin Colbert stayed on, said he would stay on through the draft, announced his retirement. They've been interviewing individuals to take over Pittsburgh's new general manager for months now, and Andy got his interview, and some good Pittsburgh reporters and writers said that they believed that he was the forerunner for the job, that he was the favorite. He hadn't gotten it yet, and it wasn't going to be announced till after the draft. We know that. But we're now a couple days after the draft, and Pittsburgh hasn't made an announcement, and we don't know the workings behind the scenes of the Steelers. Maybe they had a timeline in place that they wanted to do things at specific times. I would think you'd want to make this decision as soon as possible. You were probably in a pretty good position to make it even before the draft. Didn't want to finalize it because you want your attention to be paid more to the draft than anything else, replacing your general manager who's walking away. But we're now a good couple days by it, and we haven't had an announcement. Does it mean that Andy's already informed them that the job is his and he's going to be walking away? So they said, well, truthfully, the only reason why Casey's here is because you're here, Andy. He's done an okay job, but not a great job. If you're going another direction, we're going to be going in another direction. Maybe that makes the most sense to me, John, but I don't know that to be the fact.
Yeah. And that's why I said, if the contract was expiring, I wouldn't even blink an eye. But the fact that the term fired was used, and if you just do the math, scouting contracts are usually 2 years. So we arrived in 2016. So 2016 and 2017 was his first contract. 2018 and 2019 was his second. 2020 and 2021 was his third. So he would have been in the middle, 2022 and 2023. So it's probably correct. They fired him. So why did they fire him? And we'll get more clarification by where he lands. If it's in Pittsburgh with Andy Weidl, they're probably doing him a favor. But we have to wait and see on that.
And the other scouts, Southwest scout, your point about Jalen Rager, I hadn't even taken it that far. I think you're dead on there. And you would think that a scout would be held accountable for more than just one player.
You would think.
When one player is as big with as big a question mark attached to it as there has been with Jalen Rager, yeah, that could be enough to cost you your job. But here's my overall question, and you've got a better grasp on this than I do because you're down there and you get a little bit of more of a feel. This is a pretty good turnover. The size of the jobs that these guys had are pretty large. This isn't just a couple of guys at the bottom of the totem pole that you're swapping out. You used the word churn earlier, which I think is right on point and accurate. These guys change teams. It's not like you get an internship as a scout, then you know you're going to be there for the next 35 years. It doesn't work that way in the National Football League. You need to move around. There are changes above you. Although the Eagles have been damn stable with Howie Roseman in place for a period of time, other teams are less stable than the Eagles. But it's just the way the industry works in the National Football League. Guys move around from team to team. So to think you're going to keep your staff in place for decades at a time doesn't go that way. Just
Yeah.
quantity-wise, this is a pretty big offseason of churn for the Eagles, is it not, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, and it's because I think, it's directly related to the turnover at the top because, as I said, when you're bringing in, like, if you look at the sort of depth chart, if you want to call it that, of
Sure.
the prior front office, you know, Andy Weidl is the quarterback. He's number one. And then his main assistants, and they split the job into two, were Brandon and Ian, and they both left. Now, above all of them was Catherine Rach because her and Howie ran the whole department. So they're not only involved with scouting, but all of football operations. So think contracts, everything from salary cap, think analytics. We talked about Alec Hallaby a little bit yesterday. Think about sports medicine and performance and the decisions about the off season. Tom Hunkley runs that department, but they're in charge of him. Everything involving football operations. Howie was obviously number one, and Catherine Rach was number two. So that's the top. When it comes to football operations, it's Roseman, it's Rach, it's Weidl, it's Cunningham and Brown as co-equals. And that's a lot of loss, especially if Andy goes.
For that top five. Yeah, the big chief is still in place, but you're telling me in order he lost his next four lieutenants.
Correct. If Andy goes to Pittsburgh.
Right. Assuming Weidl is Pittsburgh bound. That's a pretty big turnover. And shoot, how he put this team together, I'm sure Jeffrey is very much in on the consultation as to who's being hired, but he himself is given Howie credit for it and said this is Howie's staff, that Howie is the one who's put this staff together with the type of people that other teams around the National Football League are going to look to poach. Oh, there's serious poaching going on. If the top four are out of town by the time next season starts, hopefully Howie has as good a season of rebuilding his front office as he has during these last couple days of the draft. All right, no drafted individual guys made available to you yesterday, but a bunch of the veteran guys were made available to all the Eagle media, including the starting quarterback. And Jalen Hurts was his usual self. On point, focused, not really emotional, but said a lot of things that you wanted to hear if you were an Eagle fan. What did you take out of Jalen's little confab yesterday?
Yeah, I think what you said, very typical. I mean, that's the way Jalen is. He's not going to be very emotional. He's not going to give you a lot. He's going to be focused. He mentioned rat poison again. That's big. He's not going to feed any rat poison to anybody. He's not going to take it. I tried to give him a little morsel of rat poison because I think the most interesting thing about Jalen Hurts in the offseason is, and by the way, it's not rat poison. I say that facetiously. People take it the wrong way. He's working out in Southern California with Tom House and Adam Day-Dow. I'm sorry, Adam. Don't know how to pronounce your last name, but they are sort of the guys in, I'll call it the mechanics industry of NFL quarterbacks. And, it was our buddy Bob Groats who asked him, have they affected your throwing motion? And Jalen kind of laughed at that. Jalen didn't like that question. But, they might have not affected his throwing motion. So I kind of followed it up and asked him more of a question that I think he would give a bigger answer to, and he did, which was, who came up with this plan? Was it more of you, or was it more of Nick and Shane and Brian Johnson? And he gave a pretty long answers, as in depth as you're going to get from Jalen. And he pretty much said it was himself. I assumed he was going to go down the route of it was a collaborative thing. It was, because I find it very hard to believe the Eagles didn't push him in that direction. And when you talk about mechanics, he can say, they're probably not messing with his throwing motion, because usually mechanics are about the bottom half of the body, the footwork and the lower half. And that's probably, I'm guessing from talking to a couple scouts, what they were working on. And I think it's a positive that um, that he was working out there. Number one, so it's all positive. Uh, but I do, you know, I guess it could be even more positive if he did it on his own. But I kind of take it like, why aren't the Eagles, you know, got a pinpoint plan? And maybe they do. Um, haven't gotten a lot of time with Nick Sirianni yet. And he'll make that clear to us at some point, whether it's on or off the record. But I don't know that yet. And it's kind of a concern to me if they didn't have a detailed plan of how he should be going about improving in the offseason. If he did it on his own, great. But I'd rather have the Eagles with a detailed plan. If I'm explaining myself, I hope I am. Do you understand what
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying?
get what you're trying to say, and here's how I would look at it, and maybe I'm off base as well. If I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I want Jalen Hurts to know what we want Jalen Hurts to become. I want to be in the process, involved. Here's what our people think. We've got an entire coaching staff that's quarterback / receiver heavy. Certainly, we're going to be the end factor as to what Jalen's going to be. If he wants to go out and take in other information, take in other coaching from other areas. We do our research when he tells us, listen, I'm going out to college to work out with these guys. If you think that it's going to negatively affect them, you put a kibosh on it. But if you think that he can pick something up out there, that it can be advantageous, you allow him to do it. Say, all right, just keep us in the loop here. When he comes back for camp, the real coaches get their hands on him. And they're going to take what he learned and what he worked on and mold it to their specification. If that's the way that it shakes out over the offseason, it can work out as all good. It's never a bad thing to get extra information in and work out. Now, there's a potential downside. All right, here comes negative Nelly McDonald. This gets so into his head that he can't think about doing it any other way, that he really likes what they're telling him, and he worked hard on it, and he got a lot of reps on it, and he comes back and Nick Sirianni says, well, Jace, here what we would prefer you to do. And then he can't adjust. He can't add what the Eagles want to do to what he worked on during the offseason. Now you got yourself a problem. So we won't know till he gets out there for whatever practice is going to have. Oh, excuse me. No practices. I guess we'll be waiting all the way till camp when we find out what he's got. If he decided on his own to go out to California and get help outside the organization, it can be very helpful, or it could be a little bit of a hurdle they're going to have to get over. I don't think we'll know till camp.
Yeah, I don't think it's any problem. That's the modern landscape of what's going on, because there's so little off-season football work in the facilities. Coaches may not like it. I always bring up Jeff Stoutland with Jordan Mailata, and he's like, I don't want anybody touching Jordan Mailata. We asked him that question about the Alliance of American Football when they were talking about, trying to get a developmental deal, so to speak, with the NFL. Never manifested itself. And he was like, no, I don't want anybody. But the reality is, it's sort of like when pro coaches complain about college coaches that they're not preparing them for the NFL. Well, that's not their job.
Right.
Players have to do things on their own now. They have to. So you have to accept this world where it's Tom House and Adam Ado working with quarterbacks, or Jordan Palmer or Quincy Avery, who Jalen usually worked out with, or Chuck Smith is one of the famous pass rushing coaches, the old Atlanta Falcons pass rusher, Duke Mayweather with offensive linemen. This is what it is. And look, they're going to be a little bit different than you are, but you have to bring that together. The last thing you want is players that don't do anything in the offseason and aren't working with these guys. So I think him working with them is all positive. My only question is, if what Jalen told me is true and that he did it on his own, why weren't the Eagles telling him to do it? That's my only problem. they should be telling him to do it, and they should be. In other words, the Eagles know all these coaches that I just mentioned for different positions, and there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of famous guys, like I gave you a bunch of less famous guys, but they should be doing their homework on who these best developmental coaches are for the offseason and steering their guys in that direction. That's what I'm trying to get across to people. The fact the players working with these guys, they have to, because they can't work out in their own facilities because of the collective bargaining agreement.
And the reason why this doesn't scare me much as turning into a hurdle and there having to be a remolding of the quarterback when they get their hands back on him is the attitude of the player. He's not a me guy. He's not an ego guy. Some people may go out, do work on their own with another coach. Now you come back in with the coach. Well, I do it this way. This is the way I do it now. This is the way I think is best. That's not been Jalen Hurts since he got here to Philadelphia. He's a very coachable kid, and he doesn't have a big ego. So I think the melding of his offseason work with his Eagle work should be just fine this spring. All right, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys hanging. Got two good guests coming your way today. 2 Ks coming your way today. Yesterday we had 2 Gs, and Groats was hysterical. We'll give you a couple of Ks today. Yeah, a little later in the show, Michael K. going to join us. But coming up next, our buddy from CBSSports.com NFL insider, Jeff Kerr, joins us here on Birds 365.